Okay, good morning and welcome to our newest extended DIS 30-minute webinar. As always, it will be recorded. If you have to leave early or you have some counterparts that didn't get a chance to listen, we will be posting it on our website and we'll let you know. It's usually going to take about 24 to 36 hours. Also, just the last admin, I just wanted to let you know we do get quite a few questions. So unfortunately, because it's only a 30-minute webinar, we don't have time to get to them, but I encourage you to put them in our questions box, and I promise you we will follow up with them after the session is over. Today, we're doing a topic called How Do Different DIS Styles Make Buying Decisions? It's a continuation of our sales topic from our March webinar. And with me today, actually, let me introduce myself. My name is Christina, and I'm a senior trainer here at Extended Disc. And I would like to welcome again my guest and my boss, Marku Kauppinen, president of Extended Disc North America. Welcome, Marku.
Thank you, Christina. How are you?
Good. So here we are doing another webinar on sales topics. Tell me why.
Well, Christina, when we started working on the last webinar in March about how this can help you in selling, I quickly realized that 30 minutes is such a short time that I really was not able to include everything that I could. So I decided that we need to have a follow-up topic, and it's particular about how prospects make decisions, because I think even the best sales professionals sometimes focus a lot on how to communicate, how to identify a prospect style, but they overlook sometimes not only how their prospect make buying decisions, but how their own decision-making style impacts their selling process. But I also want to make sure that this webinar, like the last one, is not going to be a complete sales training program. It's nothing like that. It's really hope to give some insights for people who are in sales profession, some new things to think about, and also people who are not in sales. I think we still have to ultimately sell things. We have to promote a new idea to our boss, so we need to sell a project to our team. So selling is part of everybody's work role and really part of everybody's life. So I hope that the webinar will give some ideas how to do that better.
Awesome. So shall we get started?
Yeah, let's get started. And we always talk about selling is that it's a very competitive profession.
Hang on one sec. I apologize. There's more than one person online saying they're having problems with sound. So just either use your computer sound is my only suggestion, or log out and log back in. All right. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Back to the webinar.
So, like I said, selling is a very competitive profession. And unfortunately, while there are many very excellent sales professionals out there who are continually working on their skills and improving their abilities and to become a more professional salesperson, there obviously are many salespeople who are not, they don't have the self-discipline, they put in the effort to improve their skills. And when it comes to selling in any profession, if you want to improve, you need to continually develop your skills. Sort of interesting, that happened this morning. I dropped off my car for a regular service, and I always deal with the same gentleman over there, very nice guy. And typically he talks about his kids like, I do. And we were talking about, all of their hobbies, the sports that they play. And I asked him, well, did you play any sports when you were a kid? He said, yeah, I played tennis all the time. But I would play tennis from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 11 o'clock in the evening. But that's all I did after school. I said, do you still play? Yeah, I still play a little bit. I said, you must be very good. I said, no, I'm terrible. I'm not practicing enough. Yeah. So it's like sports. It's like our profession. We must continually work to develop our skills. And I think that any sales professional who's serious about being on top of their game, they need to be working with a sales training or sales coach to make sure that they are getting out of their comfort zone. But going back to the webinar topic today, we just cannot repeat the same behaviors over and over as we talked in the last webinar. We need to continually modify our behavioral style. And what it really comes down to is always these 4 steps. We need to understand that our prospects are different. We need to have a clear understanding what our selling style is to create that confident self-awareness. And we need to have the skills to identify the styles of our prospect. We need to look for those consistent behavioral patterns. We don't want to jump into conclusions about our prospect style too quickly. And we spent some time on that last time. But ultimately, it's all about modifying our selling style. The most important step is really that if I know who I am and how I tend to sell, how I communicate, how I make buying decisions, it comes down to how do we adjust our selling style.
Yeah, and for those of you, this should look familiar if you're familiar with extended disc. These 4 steps, very important. Sometimes we focus on a few of those steps, but we need to keep practicing to actually be a master at all 4 steps, eventually getting to step number 4, which is the most critical.
Yeah, it's most critical because we need to remember that our prospects are not the same. They're very different. They have a different way of looking at the world. They have a different way of buying things. They have different ways of making decisions. And ultimately, selling is about getting to that decision. Now, the decision may not be, yes, I want to buy your product or service, but it could be a no decision. But we need to move the sales process forward, and typically it's you making decisions all the way throughout. Some decisions are easier to make. It's only one call sell situation, and the prospect either buys or doesn't buy a product. But ultimately, we need to help the prospect to make the decision. The worst scenario is that they don't decide. We don't have a clear understanding what the next steps are. We might have a great conversation, but if there's no clear plan what we're going to do next, I consider that a failure when it comes to selling.
And we know that, especially in the sales profession, more than in any other profession, you have one chance, right?
Very great point. I mean, we typically have a one chance. In other situations, we have opportunities to make up for our shortcomings, if you will. But in selling, when the prospect is not, when something doesn't work, that might be over. You might be your only chance. You might have a second chance, but it might come years later when your competitor who got the business made a mistake and now they're looking for other alternatives. But yes, there's typically only one chance, so we really need to be at the top of our game.
That's a great point.
So when it comes to decision-making style, one of the things that I see happen fairly frequently, even with the great salespeople, they do have a great understanding what their communication style is, and they realize that their prospects are different, and they really are able to make clear, good decisions about how to modify their style. But it seems that sometimes they overlook what an important role the decision-making style of the prospect and their own makes in the selling process. Because again, it's all about making decisions. And sometimes I see that people, and me included, I tend to assume that people make decisions the same way that we do. And when we have that, not have that clear awareness that my prospect probably have specific decision-making preferences, it's difficult for us to facilitate how to make that decision-making easier. For example, my father. My father is a very, very high C style. I mean, it's off the chart C style. And over the years as I grew up, I saw him in buying situations many times. And I could just see that C style come out, asking for a lot of information, a lot of details. He wanted to make sure he made the correct decisions because he hated to make wrong ones. And when he made bad decision, he would think about it over and over, even there was nothing he could do about it anymore. And when salespeople did not realize that decision-making preference and did not respond to it appropriately, they typically failed. And I think a lot of times happen is that the salesperson was different from their style, my dad's style, and we're not able to understand what information, what type and how much of information he needed to be able to make that decision. And if we are able to make those adjustments, we are going to fall short at times.
Now, if you happen to be a very high C salesperson and you come across your dad, then you're lucky. But there's a pretty good chance you're going to run into someone who is not your style.
Yeah, the odds are against you. No matter what your style is, the chances are that your prospect shares your style. It's going to be low percentage.
Yeah.
So 60 to 70% of the time, the prospect will know somebody else, meaning that they make the decisions differently. And we need to understand what their decision-making preferences are.
Exactly.
And one thing that makes this a little bit more difficult is that in sales situations, sales professional, no matter how good they are, sometimes they feel some pressure or at least nervous. Now, there are some people who they have a healthy pipeline, they are doing well, and they go in the sales call not feeling the pressure of having to close the deal. However, if the pressure is in there and it creeps into the sales call, what will also likely to happen is that the sales professional will revert to their natural style, how they communicate, how they motivate, how they move the process forward. That's the thing we often call autopiloting.
Mm-hmm.
So the pressure can make it more difficult here as well. Becomes more difficult for the sales professional to think about, what do I need to do to help this prospect make decision?
So, like you said, strong emotions can sometimes cause us to not modify behaviors. But I also find that, when we're successful, when we're already kind of in that comfort zone of doing things well, don't we also autopilot?
That's an excellent point, because when we do get comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
we sometimes get a little overconfident. And if we are doing well, we're successful, we are, the, let's say, the best salesperson in the organization, maybe I don't feel the motivation to prepare as well. Maybe I don't feel the need to be as focused and present what's really happening. Maybe I forget to identify the prospect styles.
Right.
I begin to think about all the successes I had, and I just begin to repeat that behavior. So yes, comfort zone, getting stuck in there can be a huge thing that really stops the development and of the salesperson and stops them from reaching higher levels of success.
That's a great point. So, Marku, where do we start?
Well, let's start first up looking at our own decision making style. Um, I know a lot of people who are very self aware,
Mm-hmm.
but I've noticed that when I ask them questions about how do you prefer to make decisions, typically they have a pretty good idea, general idea, what their decision making style is. But for some reason, they don't really have that deeper understanding how they truly make decisions.
Okay.
And that is the reason that we include the decision making style, not only the sales assessments, but when we look at, let's say, leaders, customer service representatives, whatever the job, professional industry might be, we typically include section about decision-making style. Because in order for us to understand how people make decisions, I think it's a good starting point is for us to realize how we make decisions. So here, for example, we are looking at a salesperson that, let's look at the first item there, checking every detail when making decisions under pressure. So this salesperson, they are not going to check every detail when making decisions under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
However, let's say they are dealing with my father, who would definitely be on the right end of that scale, definitely would be there at that number 5, meaning that he will check the details.
Yeah, and I like this because it's so visual. It's one thing to know that if I'm looking at my own, oh, well, I fall on the left side. Checking details is not comfortable or natural to me. I have to be aware of it. And if I come across your father, who's on the far right side of the scale, who does check every detail, I need to move my box, right?
You absolutely, because the prospect typically has very little motivation to modify their
Mm-hmm.
behavior. In fact, because there are many salespeople who are not professional, when we are dealing with salespeople, we tend to be very guarded sometimes, at least initially. I mean, all of have had experiences when salespersons did not really act very professionally, and that
Mm-hmm.
creates sort of a fear, or at least we get cautious that people try to sell us something. Maybe
Yeah.
we may feel the pressure, etc. So we get a little bit comfortable, and when we feel uncomfortable, and the prospects do feel pressure as well, they revert to their natural style too, making it more difficult for them to modify their behavior. So it's really the sales professional's responsibility to modify their behavior. And by the way, that's the only thing they can control. You can't control the prospect. You can control only your behavior and how you're going to modify it.
And as a customer, I may not want to modify, right? I may not feel I need to because I feel like maybe I'm more in charge of the situation or I have more power.
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the times when most individuals feel more powerful. Hey, they
Mm-hmm.
know I'm the one who has the money and I'm about to make a buying decision. And sometimes people use that power for different reasons. Sometimes they might be a little abusive about it. I mean, as a sales professional, you have to take that. But you can see when prospects are sometimes behaving in a way that they might normally not do, but they still revert their natural
Mm-hmm.
style. They feel that they are in the comfort area, they are in the position of power, and they are not going to change their decision-making style. Now, one thing I need to point out, when we are talking about decision-making style and when we identify it for individuals, we are talking about decisions that the natural decision-making style that really comes out the most when they are making decisions that are a little bit unfamiliar for them
Mm-hmm.
or riskier decisions. If we are buying things we are buying every day, we are not even thinking about it that much. There's low risk. And when there's a
Mm-hmm.
low risk, it's easier for us to modify our behavior to make it differently. For example, if I'm let's say a C style who typically is really focused on making the correct decision. Well, if I'm a C style and I made that kind of buying decision over and over, I don't have to slow down and look at all the details. I've done that behavior already in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So this is more of a factor when we are buying products or services that are more expensive or they're unfamiliar to the prospect. They really then revert to their natural style. So I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Yeah, the bigger the decision, the bigger the pressure. So
that's right. And then again, then we need to understand how does my prospect, what is their natural decision-making style so I can facilitate their decision-making, make it easier for them.
So can we talk about some tips now?
Let's talk about some tips, and let's start about talking about how the different styles make decisions. For example, when we talk about S styles, we often mention that they're a little slower in the decision making. And by the way, we're not saying that's good or bad. It's just that they tend to be slower because they focus on how their decisions impact others. They don't want to disappoint others. They want to make sure that when they make a decision, everybody else are on board with them. But this decision is actually making their life better. So they have to consider the decision from many different viewpoints and perspectives. Now, C style, they're slower too, but a little bit of a different reason. They want to make sure they make the correct decision. They don't want to be in a situation that others or even themselves have to say, hey, that was a bad choice. I did not really do a thorough analysis and evaluate different alternatives. So they tend to slow down in their decision making. So that when it comes to C styles. Now, our I styles, very optimistic. What could go wrong? Well, C style. Let me tell you what could go wrong.
Exactly.
But all styles make decisions emotionally. Buying decisions typically are emotional, and later on we find the reasons why it's a good decision, and all the information will support those decisions. But the I styles tend to be more emotional to begin with. So you need to be aware of that they prefer to, make them of a feeling space, not so much information. They're very intuitive and quick, and they enjoy often the buying process. And these, of course, they just, they move so fast. They want to make quick decisions. So here we need to almost stay away from their decision-making process. Let them be in control, these styles like that, and make sure that we don't give them too much information. They only want the essential information. What they want to get, they will ask for that.
Sometimes they've already made the decision before they come to buy it from you.
Yeah, by the way, Christina, here we are assuming that my product that I'm selling is something that is a good solution. It's a right fit for the prospect. We always need to keep that in mind. So you can never be manipulative with your selling process. You always have to look that fit for the prospect, make sure that it's the right way to go.
I'm impressed you got that word out. I don't know if I would have. Okay, so we know we need to practice, and there are different tips that were shown today. But are there other ways to kind of think about how prospects make buying decisions?
Well, I think one thing that we can look at is what kind of fears the different styles have, because especially when we're making important buying decisions and it impacts other people, it's expensive product or service we're buying, sometimes people do have some fears. So for example, for an S style, one of the biggest fears is disappointing others. And imagine this: if the sales professional were to ask a question from an S style prospect that, let me ask you this, what kind of impact will this buying decision have on your team? Now you really think about how different that is when somebody's talking about the features and benefits. Now you're really dealing with a thing that is a fear for the S style. And by the way, S style, we know they're not very expressive. It's sometimes very difficult to read what's on their mind. But now you are talking about things that are important for them. You're really setting yourself apart from other salespeople who are calling on that prospect. And assuming that you built trust with them, now you become that sounding board that S styles often look. And now you are talking about issues that are really, really important for that S style prospect. Or how about C style? What if you ask a question? What are some of the critical factors we want to and need to make sure we get correctly with this decision? Now you speak in their language.
Exactly.
Not only their language, you're talking about things that are really dear and important for them, and also things that are going to be challenges or obstacles that they have to overcome in their own mind before they're going to buy.
Mhm.
You are dealing with their objections and stalls up front before they.
Yep.
Sometimes people have even when they discover things that they didn't really realize that could be a challenge. And if you bring them up as a sales professional, I mean, you're on the same team. You're making the buying decision together now.
Mhm.
Now with these, they don't want to lose that control. So you always want to make sure that they feel that they are in charge in that sales call and in the process of moving the sales process forward. And for the I styles, they want to make sure that they maintain influence and their decisions are seen as popular. So you may want to ask questions of how are other people going to perceive this decision? What kind of impact will it have how other people see you in the organization? And now you're again talking about things that are really important for the different styles of prospects, helping them make the decision.
Yeah, I like that there's more than one way to look at it. For some people, this might be an easier approach because we know that when we're under pressure, we need something that comes easily for us, even though we know you're going to practice out there. I think when you're thinking about what prospects fear and know what might be holding them back, that's an advantage and a great tool for you to have.
It is, and one of the things that I think it's helpful for people, whatever the context is when they're using DISC, is to really think about people in their lives that they know well, family members, friends, colleagues. So if you're thinking about, for example, iStyle, think about a person that you know well, and think about how that iStyle person makes buying decisions.
I know you're good at C styles, knowing your dad pops into your head, I'm sure.
Yes, it just helps me. Okay, let me think about how that person buys the product, especially when it's expensive or more complicated. And then you really realize in concrete, practical terms what it means.
Yeah.
And if you're the salesperson or if you are an employee trying to sell an idea to a committee, for example, and you understand how different styles buy and how you influence them, how you communicate them, I think it makes it a little bit easier.
Great.
Well, another thing we talked about the fears, but let's also talk about the frustrations because sometimes salespeople get in the way of the sale. I mean, you and Christina know I'm a low I. I'm much more of an introvert than extrovert, and for some reason, it seems that all the extroverted salespeople call on me. And hey, I do well D behaviors, S behaviors, C behaviors, but I behavior is the one that is most challenging for me. So as long as the salesperson is not too I style, I think we have a pretty positive interaction, and as long as their product is good fit for us, I'm going to buy the product. But there's been many situations when the salesperson just simply did not realize what was happening in terms of our behavioral style differences. And I've said no to purchases that I probably should have made because I simply wanted to get the sales call over. So if the salesperson doesn't understand what those differences are and doesn't adjust his or her style, they can become real problems. So if we deal with a D style prospect, you need to move at their pace. If you are indecisive and if you're slow, you get in the way of the sale. I mean, sometimes if you are not a D, you may even believe that their buying behavior is somewhat reckless, but that is their style. And again, assuming your product service is a good fit, let them buy the way they buy. Don't get in the way of the sale. S styles, you need to slow down. You can't be impatient with them because they need to think about how that buying decision impacts everybody else. And again, asking good questions to help them facilitate that decision making and look at the buying decision from different angles. You can actually speed it up, but still you cannot put any kind of time pressure on it because otherwise you are going to see it's insensitive, the trust goes away, and now
it's gone.
It's
Sales
gone.
is gone. Yeah.
C's, surprises and unpredictability will frustrate them quite a lot. So when they're asking for those specific questions and want that detailed information, you better give that information. And if you don't have it, it's okay to say, I don't have it right now. I'll get it for you. But never make up stuff. Because if you make up stuff and they find out later that it's not right, what's going to happen? It's over.
Yeah.
And iStyles, not last but not least, rather, they want things to be a little bit more informal. They want to have, lack of a better word, fun in the process. So even that we want to make sure that we have a clear agenda for the sales call, so it's moving ahead, it's on target, on point, and on time. We need to make sure that it doesn't become too formal or kind of stiff, because that will really dampen their enthusiasm to move forward.
I really appreciate your honesty, Marku, about I-style salespeople. I know we all have our own preconceived notions that certain styles, when we hit them, we already have that, preconceived notion. And we are in the, like you said, the position of power when we're in the buying, we're as the prospect. So we, as a sales professional, we need to recognize that you have more, some barriers to overcome.
Yeah, and I realize, have a self-awareness that when I'm dealing with I-style salespeople, I'm sure that I make them feel, not intentionally, but because I don't react that I-style way, I make them feel uncomfortable, and now they begin to feel that pressure. They get nervous, and now they revert to their natural style even
They
more.
become more, yeah,
Exactly. So they
exactly.
begin to emphasize that behavior.
Yeah, I really like how this, obviously I work for DIS, but I like how DIS works in all human interactions, that we just can simply reframe it in different roles or areas.
And one of the foundation is to understand that all the people are different, prospects are different, and if they ask a lot of why questions, then it one clue, we need to look for more clues, those patterns of behavior, that maybe I'm dealing with a C-style prospect, or if they ask a lot of what's the bottom line here, the what questions give me a clue that maybe I'm dealing with a D style, or how it's going to impact my team. I'm dealing with an S, or who's going to be involved, who else is doing this, my I style prospect. And one thing that is really, really important to do is that you need to debrief your sales calls or debrief your meetings that you have at work, and think about, did I effectively identify that prospect's behavioral style? Was I dealing with a D, or maybe it was an ID, or whatever the case may be? You need to really think about, how did you reach that conclusion? And do you think you were accurate in your identification of that person's style? And then you also need to consider, how do they make buying decisions? And what kind of adjustments are made throughout the sales call to really facilitate not only the communication and motivating that person, but make it easier for my prospect to make a decision. I'm not saying necessarily yes decision.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully that's what the outcome is. Sometimes a no decision, but at least move the process forward. And because that is the best time to do it. And even if you do this every day, just like playing tennis, you have to practice every day. And debriefing a sales call or debriefing a meeting that you have work, I think, is one of the best way of doing it, because then you're continually thinking about it, you're developing your skills, and it becomes habit, it becomes second nature. Not saying that you can stop debriefing and thinking about it, but it becomes easier and easier, and you can become more calm and relaxed about the process, and you can really focus on some other parts of the selling process.
Yeah, I think it just also, just for me, it reinforces, DISC itself is not a sales technique, but it's a tool that can enhance your sales techniques, especially like you said, or as Marku said, if you practice and debrief.
Yeah, it explains how we sell, and also how we buy and how we make decisions. And just again, you need to work as a sales professional with somebody to really put all these pieces together and practice role play, debrief the calls with your sales coach to really understand what you can do better and how you can improve. Because again, it's a very competitive field. You need to be among the best if you want to be successful, obviously.
Well, thank you, Marku, and thanks all of you for joining us today. We do have another webinar scheduled, Misconceptions of DISC Styles.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the DISC styles and what are some of the misconceptions. We think about what D styles are all about and what I styles are all about, and I think we will learn some new things, and I'm looking forward to that in 3 weeks.
All right. Well, thank you guys again. I'll let you know when it's posted. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day.